Good afternoon, and welcome to today's Roads and Bridges webinar titled Keys to Success in Digital Delivery, a panel discussion with Pennoni, the Delaware DOT, and ALLPLAN, sponsored by ALLPLAN. I'm Ryan Curtis, editor of Roads and Bridges with Endeavor Business Media. To begin, let me explain how you can participate in today's presentation. First, if you have any technical difficulties during today's session, please submit to the questions window, and our technical experts will help you out. We recommend disabling any pop-up blocking software or extensions in your browser, as these can cause issues with the webinar player. Additionally, we welcome your questions during today's event. We will answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A session that will follow the main presentation, but please feel free to send in your questions at any time. To do so, simply type your questions into the question window on the side of your screen and hit the submit button. Also, please be aware that today's session is being recorded and will be available on the Roads and Bridges website within the next 24 hours. You'll be notified by email when the archive is ready. Now, I would like to introduce our speaker for today's discussion. David Lowery is Infrastructure Business Development Manager at ALLPLAN. As a practicing engineer in China, his work focused on fiber composites in civil infrastructure, including bridges and power plants, before he transitioned into the AEC software industry upon returning to the United States. Michael Lestra, PE, a senior engineer project manager in Pennoni's Newark, Delaware office, has more than 21 years of experience as a bridge engineer and 3D bridge modeling. He has worked extensively on both large-scale, small-scale projects and movable bridge projects for both highway and rail. For Pennoni, he manages multi-discipline bridge projects and performs bridge analysis and design for both steel and concrete structures. Additionally, he also implements and manages Pennoni's bridge information modeling procedures and standards used on bridge design projects. Scott Walls is a project manager with the Delaware Department of Transportation. In his current position as project manager, Scott leads a small group of engineers and consultants from project initiation through project completion. Scott helped jumpstart the department's accelerated bridge construction program by being amongst the first designers to utilize ultra-high performance concrete, geosynthetic reinforced soil, integrated bridge system, and steel deck modular superstructure units. Welcome to our presenters. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Ryan.
Of course. So when we held our last panel discussion last year, you were in the middle of a BIM project. What made you decide to go that route and specify that a model be produced?
Yeah, Delaware, and specifically the Delaware Department of Transportation, is really aware that the industry for the design and construction of transportation infrastructure projects continues to evolve, right? Technology is always changing. The tools to accomplish those things are more efficient continually. And DelDOT's, currently assessing and modernizing our approach to performing project-related design and providing contract documents for construction. In the past, DelDOT had demonstrated that we can be pretty successful at designing roadways with 3D models, and we're really looking to expand that knowledge and that skill set into 3D bridge modeling. And we've done various levels of 3D bridge modeling with in-house design engineers, so there was an established knowledge base there. That work we had done previously really piqued our interest in what BIM could offer, and we're seeking to continue to evolve in that direction as well. So we knew it was time to partner with one of our design consultants who could really dedicate the necessary time and resources to the effort. And for the replacement of Bridge 1-447 on Taylor's Bridge Road, we partnered with Pennoni Associates to launch a pilot program that required the use of a 3D BIM model to be created and used throughout design, and then specifically create 2D plans directly from that model that we would use as contract documents for bidding and eventually for construction. So ultimately, it was really an exploratory project for the department with the goal of helping to guide some of our programs and our standards and our expectations moving forward for other projects. So it's really just a great opportunity to discover and explore the possibilities of the software program that we previously didn't have much experience with, put it through its paces in real time and real life. Like I said, hopefully guide future decisions for BIM modeling here in Delaware.
Awesome. What led to Pennoni's interest in this project?
Well, Pennoni considers himself to be a pretty innovative firm, especially when it comes to BIM modeling for bridges. So we were really looking forward to trying out this new software. It was a software that advertises itself as being able to make us some of the deficiencies that are present in some of the other offerings that are on the market, particularly in plan development. So we were really looking forward to seeing what the ALLPLAN software could do, see what it was capable of, put it through the paces on a real project, and see if we could deliver the same kind of quality that we're used to delivering.
Oh, perfect. So there haven't been many BIM projects like this so far. What made DOT decide to do this early on before most states?
Yeah, you're right. There really haven't been many, especially in Delaware, where we've specifically required the use of BIM software. But Delaware is a state with principles founded in innovation. We want to be on the forefront of some of those technologies that are being introduced and are continuing to evolve. And not just because they're new and they're shiny, but because we truly see the benefit in them long term. And BIM modeling holds a ton of potential and promise. We're a small state, so it's unfortunately one of the big advantages there is having the flexibility, especially as a project manager in a small state, to kind of be involved as the design progresses, really be able to learn alongside of the design teams, whether they are in-house or our consultant teams. And we just had that perfect opportunity here to bring Pennoni in. They had that similar, as Mike mentioned, similar interest in knowledge base as BIM. And we wanted to really launch it and see what we could do with it. I'd also have, one thing that Mike had shared with me in the past is, it's important for owners to really establish governing criteria. And that criteria, it's early on. We need to get those standards established to allow our consultants on all projects to jump in, use models, and integrate them into their normal workflows, allowing them really to benefit in the long term. So, it does feel maybe like it's a little bit early, but we knew we were interested in it. We knew there was promise there. And, we really wanted to get it off the ground, get an initiative going, and sooner rather than later, right? We got to test it out. We need to find out what works and what doesn't. And we got to make sure that we're continuing to improve. It's not going, I guess it's always, maybe easier to be proactive more so than it is reactive in the long run.
And I'll add that definitely aligns with what we see in the consulting engineering community as well. A lot of folks are concerned about, if I'm paraphrasing, basically, if we develop our own ways of working, our own processes for this, what happens once the DOT standardizes on something? So this transition really does need DOTs like Delaware and others out there saying, well, this is what we're working on. We want to hear what our consultants are working on, and then we're going to work on integrating what we've done and what we've seen you do into a set of standardized processes and standardized outcomes, workflows, standards.
Perfect. And so now you're finalizing the design on that project. So how is that going?
So far, it's going pretty well. We started this project a few years ago, and in preliminary design, we noticed that the handshake between two of the main programs we were using, Open Roads and ALLPLAN, the interaction, really wasn't quite there. But we had some dialogue with ALLPLAN, and they've made some, really good progress to establish the links and the transfer of information that was necessary. And now, as we've gotten past that conceptual analysis and preliminary design, and now that we're in final design, we're really strickling just with the ALLPLAN software to develop the bridge plans. It's been going much smoother. We've been able to focus a lot on the model and the plan development, the presentation, and developing, the reinforcement, the quantities, and we're really beginning to realize the expectations that we had going in regarding the capabilities of the software.
A question of my own then, but we're seeing a lot of folks start to talk about model-based design. Rather than full digital delivery where we're shipping a model as the primary contract document, rather we're talking about, call it an interim step, where the model's serving as the basis for a set of conventional deliverables, a set of plans. That's something that you're aiming to bring to fruition here, something that we're seeing come to fruition here?
Yeah, I think so. When we went into this with the expectation that we're going to have a model-based design, we were going to generate the plans from the model. And we've continued that approach thus far. We've had to work through how to grapple with presentation, and that wasn't to be unexpected, or that wasn't unexpected. We knew that developing plans from a 3D model is new territory. There are going to be adaptations that needed to be made. But we're seeing what we expected. There's been some rough patches. There's been some good patches. Some of the plans look great. Some of them look absolutely fantastic. some need to be improved quite a bit. But we do understand that this is, still in the early stages. All the features aren't going to be there on day one. That said, it's been a really good process working with ALLPLAN to identify how to improve the software, get the functionality that's needed in so that we can deliver this project the way we expect and the way we anticipated it.
I made a quip to you once upon a time that if we had delivered you a finished product on day one, it would not have been the finished product that you want and need.
Yeah, maybe one thing to add there. We kind of glanced over it, but I think it's really important that we don't forget. It's just all the benefits that we saw early on in the design process with the BIM model, things like alternatives analysis, constructability analysis and review, and public outreach efforts. Some of the renderings that were able to be generated from the BIM model, they were really incredible, and they allowed us to establish a really great working relationship with the community. And the proposed structures, it's quite a bit larger and higher than what's existing there now. So being able to really visually communicate those changes to the public really provided a great benefit for the BIM effort that was needed. This project's been going on, as Mike said, for a couple of years now. So we've demonstrated that we can really leverage good data throughout the process from one single BIM model, as opposed to maybe doing it the old-fashioned way where you're constantly recreating new things along the way.
So what did you expect and how did it differ from reality?
I think one of the expectations that was different from reality was we went into this project thinking that we were going to create every detail from the bridge model. And as we were going through that, we found that it really wasn't beneficial to do that. We were able to utilize a lot of the standard details that DOT had in their bridge design manual. So we didn't have to create all those details in the model to a really high level of detail. The details covered it pretty effectively. So we had a lot of conversations. You're looking for ways to optimize yet remain efficient with the modeling effort and plan development. And then when it comes to BIM modeling, you have to set that expectation of what the level of detail is going to be, because it can be really time consuming to put everything into the model. On the flip side there, interoperability, really seems to be the biggest thing from my perspective. If BIM's going to take hold in this industry, the ability of all these softwares to interact with each other, it really has to be there. And the fact that there are barriers, there have been barriers, there remains barriers to all these platforms. There isn't a good way to seamlessly transfer information back and forth. It's probably been one of the biggest things to continue to hold all this back. And I think it's a large challenge. Again, it's one of the biggest things that we face thus far.
Is that a set of features that we have successfully improved on over the course of the project? The open roads links, the links to Midas and the other analysis softwares?
Yeah, when we started this project, there really wasn't a great way to transfer open roads data into the ALLPLAN platform and vice versa. And, we worked with you guys. And now that there are tools, they've been implemented that make that process, much more seamless. So that's certainly an improvement that we've seen.
I guess from our perspective, as with Pennoni, I think this proceeded largely the way we expected it to. We knew going in that we were going to need to be able to be responsive to their development needs, iterate not just workflows, workarounds, but also the product itself, the features that we offer straight out of the box. And that's something we've done our best to deliver on over the last couple of years. Certainly, as Mike says, can't claim perfection at this point, but modeling workflows have been improved from when they started. The information that we can draw on from other platforms has been substantially improved. And really, I think as you had said, Mike, the plans presentation, the workflows that feed into it have been cleaned up a lot to make this an easier tool to use. There's still improvement to be had, though. And you guys continuing to use ALLPLAN on this project and other projects is going to help us continue to make sure that it gets better as we go.
Exactly. When we first started laying the drawings out, we found a lot of shortcomings in presentations, particularly when it came with the DOT standards and making the plans look like a DOT set of bridge plans. And we worked pretty closely with ALLPLAN to implement the features that were needed there. So thus far we've been able to create a set of plans that are in line with what DOT's used to seeing. And again, having all those features now into the program, and you guys have been pretty responsive in giving us all the tools that we need to help deliver the project as expected.
Yeah, the results so far of the pilot project are mostly in line with our expectations as well. The substantial deliverable that I've seen and been able to review from the Pennoni team, really distilling how they're using ALLPLAN and BIM in their design effort, has been through the 2D plan set submissions, right? And one thing I really want to be clear on is that we expected these deliverables to look a little bit different than what DOT bridge plans have looked like in the past with hand-drawn CAD plans, et cetera. So that's okay, right? And we all have that understanding that producing these directly from the model is going to leave us with an output that's just a little bit different than what we're used to seeing. But that information is there, the quality is there, and I have no doubt that these 2D plan sets will serve the department well through bidding and construction. But being ready for that adjustment and plan presentation, especially for internal reviews on the department side, is really key.
So how did the DOT consultant and vendor collaborate to make sure this project was a success?
So I want to jump right on that just to follow up Scott's comment from a moment ago. We've seen immense innovation and flexibility out of the DOT on this, especially when it comes to presentation of the drawings. There's a lot of automation that's going to be within reach for model-based processes for creating these submittals, but we can achieve that if and only if the DOT is willing to accept slight differences in the way that information gets depicted on drawings. Because at the end of the day, we're not drawing these things anymore per se. We're creating 3D objects, a 3D model, and then essentially slicing it to generate 2D representations and letting the computer program decide exactly how those representations should look. And DOT's been very forward-looking in that it's willing to have the information depicted any way that is clear and effective and is kind of an organic evolution on its existing standards. But it's been willing to kind of depart with past practices, some of the standards that have accumulated over the 50 years that we've been doing CAD, but that aren't necessarily going to be relevant going forward. And this is one thing that we consistently hear consultants, especially DOTs, other software vendors say is going to be necessary, that the consultants need a bit of leeway to be able to innovate.
Yeah, exactly. There's been a lot of collaboration from the three groups here. We've made a lot of requests of ALLPLAN, as I keep mentioning, to introduce a lot of the features that we feel are needed to make improvements. And ALLPLAN says they've done a really good job. They've been really responsive in accommodating all the needs that we have. We've also had a lot of conversation and discussion with DOT and about the expectations and the alterations required for our plan development, things that will allow us to innovate and present information that is in line with the software's functionality. A lot of discussion on what the final product's going to look like. And there's been some give and take from every party here on how to keep everything moving forward.
And just to chime in again, I mean, the things that Pennoni has asked for, the features that we've developed, these are the things that we need to serve them and all of our customers and clients here well, and serve everyone's interest. I was going to say this earlier, but from our perspective, having a consultant involved in this project in our corner who knows what they're doing and has experience in this space has been hugely beneficial to us. Turning this from a workflow, which was admittedly rough and ready on day one a couple of years ago, into something that is much more ready for widespread production use.
Yeah, on behalf of the owner, much of the detailed effort that's being done here is by the Pennoni's team, right? But from the owner's perspective, we're just trying to put the right people in the right space, really create a place for them to innovate and to create. And ultimately, we believe that good things are going to come out of that situation. And we're committed to communication, availability, being open-minded for change and things like that. And so far, we're seeing that to be true. There's a shared interest amongst everyone on this team to see this as a success and not just localized to this specific project, but realizing the greater implications that lessons learned from this project will have.
So what benefits did you see from this project, and how will it change the way you work going forward?
As far as benefits, I think a couple come to mind here. The first was, I think it's the obvious one, right? Being able to see the entire project modeled. You can take a look at it from a 3D perspective much more easily and identify where the conflicts or the issues are, how they need to be resolved. Because that's always not easily done when looking at 2D plans. So as we work through design, we're looking to utilize the model for constructability, verify the geometry in the model, designing it so it's accurate, so that when we get into construction and any of those conflicts and issues have been resolved, and using a 3D model lets us resolve those now. The second one, I think, when we went into this, and like I had mentioned earlier, we had certain expectations, and being able to work through a project like this from start to finish has helped us to identify where the benefits of having a model are. You go in with a plan, and then you got to switch gears. Having been through that now from start, now, just getting to the end here, we're able to see what the benefits were and all the shortcomings are. It'll leave us better to be able to move forward on future projects, refine our BIM modeling process, our internal standards, and become much more efficient with the entire modeling process and plan development process. And I think that's a big bonus for us in future endeavors utilizing BIM models.
So what's next for this project?
For this project, we're finalizing our 2D design plans that we are planning to use as legal bid documents. In support of those 2D documents, we do plan to supplement them at the time of bid with the 3D model that's been produced. And while that model won't be a binding document, we're hoping that it'll be a tool that the contractor can use. They can get into it. They can pull information from. They can, really start to learn how to handle it, and then they can provide us feedback, what worked well, what didn't work well, and ultimately, we want to learn what parts of the model they found to be most effective, and that information can help us really guide where we're continuing to develop our 3D BIM standards. So, we're finding great use out of these models in design, but ideally, we really want to be able to transfer that information further into construction as well. So yeah, ultimately, we're super excited about this transition between design and construction. Excited to see how things work out when it's really, under construction and diving into those details. We set out, again, this to be a pilot project just to create a BIM model and design. I think we've achieved that, and now we want to see our best, see what best effort can happen and what we can learn from those construction teams that will be using it.
And I think we've already started discussing how to make our own model viewing software available, as well as facilitating kind of the data exchange into the other common contract platforms used by contractors, so that we can really figure out what they can do with this data. Sure, we have our best guesses, but at the end of the day, the contractors are going to be able to provide us a lot more insight as to what they can do, how, and what has value. Than our guesses coming from kind of the vendor, the consultant, the project owner side.
Is DelDOT going to push forward with more projects delivered this way? Or do you see your consultants trying these things out themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. We do see maybe more projects delivered this way. We don't have any specific BIM pilot projects currently in progress. And really the reason for that is because we've successfully completed one. And we're hoping to see that transition of BIM really as a standard practice. Maybe it's a case-by-case basis, depending on the type of project that's under design, but really starting to integrate itself more into the standard workflows. Maybe someday, every project we initiate and design will go through BIM. But right now we're really trying to, identify important ones and ones that can, sort of benefit the most from maybe the additional effort that's needed at this time. But we saw a lot of successes here, and we intend to continue that moving forward. Again, we can, hopefully set some standards as a state that will allow our consultants to achieve them, integrate workflows, BIM workflows into their standard practices, and continue pushing in that direction. So it's absolutely our plan here. Spun up some internal working groups amongst the DOT here that are really helping to guide those new workflows and those standards and set some things in place for our design deliverables going forward.
Perfect. How will Pennoni build on the back of this project?
Well, we already use the modeling approach to bridges on our projects. Certainly not to the level that we were doing on this one. And again, mainly that's because of the historical challenges that we've seen in plan development. And having a BIM models is certainly a useful tool to assist you in your design, and we don't think that's going to change. But from what we've seen on this project, it's becoming more of a reality to create 2D plans from these models. And we're going to continue to evaluate that process and look for ways to make this part of our standard workflow moving forward, especially as the software continues to mature.
And to us, that's exactly what model-based design is. It's a stepping stone to the day when we're doing digital delivery and the model is the primary deliverable. Obviously, Scott, as you said, today the DOTs, even more forward-looking ones like yourselves, like Utah, like Iowa, PennDOT, they're still largely or near universally actually requiring plans as the ultimate deliverable for bridge projects. And that's not going to just miraculously disappear in a poof of smoke anytime soon. No one thinks there's going to come a day when I go to bed having delivered my last project in CAD and everyone wakes up the next morning and they've just magically been taught how to model overnight. Our vision for this, at the behest of our consultant partners and our DOT partners, is to provide a model-based process that can serve as a stepping stone to that day when the model is the full deliverable. Give us all some time to work out the kinks, give engineers and draftspeople and modelers time to, learn a new way of working in some instances. But ultimately, the goal is to say, hey, this process allows us to deliver plan sets on every project this way. And it's economical. It's competitive from the consultant and the DOT standpoint with doing these things entirely in CAD. It's got all the benefits that Mike listed as far as virtual design and construction, fit up, visualization, really conflict checking. All the benefits are there, but it also gets us ready then for the day when that model actually is going to be the signed and sealed deliverable, and the CAD documents, to the extent that they're still around, are a reference.
Perfect. What recommendations do you have to other owners or consultants who want to get ahead of this?
Well, my recommendation is to start doing it. This isn't anything new. If anybody out there thinks that BIM modeling for bridges is going away, it's not. You have to start using the software. You have to start getting familiar with it. You have to start training your staff. Getting your teams familiar with making and building bridge models, because otherwise, when the time comes, the DOTs are going to start requiring it. You're not going to be prepared for it. So start working out now. BIM models they're currently very useful tools. They're very easy to build, and I think everybody should be making use of them in some aspect.
Yeah, I'd say something really similar. It's one of those things almost you don't know what you don't know, and there's some great states leading their own charge here. There's some amazing resources from ASHO. There's a lot of information that you can pull from other entities online and webinars and things like that. But honestly, until you do it yourself, until it works within your own organization, you really can't have a full-scale understanding of what BIM can truly offer you. So certainly utilize those resources that are available. We certainly have. They've been important to us. But I would absolutely encourage you to start a pilot project in your own state on one of your own projects, right? As Mike said, it's coming. And we know that it's just going to get better every day. And because of that, it's going to make this whole industry more efficient. So jump in, see what works for you, help us all improve, stay in contact with other states and entities around you, and we can continue to grow truly as a community on this one.
Perfect. You guys want to jump into some Q&A?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, a few of you have already submitted some questions, so we're going to jump right in. As a reminder, if you would like to submit a question, type your question into the question window on the side of your screen and hit the submit button. So, question number 1. Did you find the review process for models to be easier or more difficult?
In this case, I think we found the QA process to be, pretty normal to what we're used to. One of the struggles that everyone has with models is how to QA/QC them, how to standardize that process. especially for, people who haven't used models before. They don't like them. They're used to paper, they're used to PDFs. This is something different. But for this project, we didn't have that. I mean, we developed plans from the model. So, when the reviewers saw something on the plans that might have been incorrect, they were like, wait a second, there's got to be something incorrect with the model. So we were able to go in there and work to correct it.
Yeah, and that's something we hear a lot is I don't think anyone really has, and we don't really have a perfect idea what QA/QC in the model space is going to look like. We've got some tools aimed in that direction for once someone fully implements digital delivery, but we can also foresee a situation that might arise where we're always producing some 2D depictions of this model because it's useful for a bunch of stuff. QA/QC on the EOR side, review from the DOT, and there are certain details that might just make sense to provide to contractors in 2D with some basic annotation. Sure, the model will relay design intent. The vast majority of the information that the contractor needs is going to be in that model, but some things it might always make sense to call out specifically. And this would be an ancillary benefit, is the ability to QA/QC the way we always have while we figure out what the future looks like.
Cool. So how does the DOT plan to provide models to the contractor?
Yeah, sure. We, that part of the process is still under development. This space in the industry is still, developing, and it isn't as widespread yet. We know we want to provide it to them, especially early stages in bidding, so that they can use it to assist with their bid. Obviously, we want to make it easy, make it available so that they can use it across platforms that they are familiar with. So we're certainly evaluating that process as we continue to move forward, and want to make sure that it can be accessible to a vast number of contractors, so we don't eliminate competitive bid and introduce a new software or a totally new program that they've kind of got to start all over from. So important piece to continue to work out. Yeah.
And from the vendor perspective, we're trying to make sure that the tools we provide as regards model consumption, viewing, the basic tools that people would use to review these models and prep a bid are accessible both financially and from the standpoint of like the existing technical skills that exist within the industry at large. Again, I think we are really looking to the contractor community to tell us what they need from this so that we can make sure those tools are going to work well. And that might just be, in some instances, being able to exchange information into the tools they have now, which is something we're also well placed to do.
Awesome. So what type of data were you able to leverage?
I'm assuming that's, I guess, I don't know if it's data transfer or not, but I guess I'll speak to the modeling process in general. So with the exception of using the model for plan details, we also, as Scott mentioned, during our session here, he talked about the public outreach. We had to develop a lot of renderings and visuals for that, and we were able to use the ALLPLAN models as a foundation of those renderings. Also quantities, all the reinforcement and material takeoffs. They were all pulled from the model. And then while I did talk about the interoperability, that we were able to exchange data. It was just wasn't as seamless as we would have liked. So we were able to utilize the alignments that were created in Open Roads, all the terrain models that we had in there, transfer 2D data from topographical surveys back and forth. So pretty much all the data sharing that we're typically used to doing was possible. Just like I said, it wasn't seamless as we would have liked, but hopefully that answers the question.
So what were some common questions that the contractors had with the digital design during bid? Anything contractors would have liked to see differently from design?
Yes, so we have not bid this project out yet. That is coming. But I love the question. It's certainly something that we're looking for. We actually internally at DelDOT put out a questionnaire recently to our contracting association asking those same exact questions. We're trying to get ahead of it now, hoping we get some feedback from them. But yeah, definitely a great question. Hopefully we have a follow-up webinar to this someday that we can focus directly on that, what the contractor use and benefits and how we can, sort of adapt to what we learned there. So maybe more to come for that one.
Will there be coordination with the contractor selected to ensure that they take a more innovative approach instead of traditional construction methods using 2D plan sets?
Yeah, absolutely. We, as we're finalizing design, we're looking sort of at some contract language that can kind of help push that innovative approach. Exactly. So we're still in development there. We don't want the BIM model to just be sort of set aside. We want to bring it to the forefront. Obviously, the 2D plans is what we're going to bid and sort of be held liable for. But that BIM information there still has, lots of information, and we still want to learn from that. So we're working on that contracting language as we speak.
Yeah. And as mentioned, we stand ready to try to make this as useful, as valuable and as simple an experience as possible for the folks who are ultimately tasked with figuring out what that model is and what's in it.
Awesome. What is your experience about signing and sealing a model?
Yeah, good question. From maybe Mike, real quick, just from the perspective of this project, since the model is not a legal document, we don't have to sign and seal it, right? So that'll be taken care of with the 2D plan set portion. But as we move forward, that's certainly a question that comes up a lot, something that needs to be answered. So that model for us right now will just be for informational purposes and doesn't need to be signed and sealed. But Mike, please, if you have any, I know you work with a lot of other ones.
Yeah, I was going to just expand upon what you just said. This is going to be an information document. We're going to be signing and sealing plans. I think there's the industry still needs to work out that whole process from a legality standpoint. There's also a little bit of reluctancy to want to go that route, and I think a lot of that does stem from the not having a really good QA/QC process that I mentioned earlier. But at least taking an approach where you're creating plans from the model, it kind of gives you that reassurance that the plans are right, the model's right. So hopefully, that some kind of a process like this does maybe reduce some of that reluctancy to want to sign and seal and maintain the level of QA/QC that we're all accustomed to.
And we, as a vendor, we're involved with some of AASHTO's efforts to figure out exactly what best practices around signing and sealing these are going to be. How do we freeze a model? How do we ensure that it is not changed in any way after the fact? Provide continuity of data, and ultimately be able to have that clear legal chain of responsibility. And I know the term is not chain of custody, but I'm going to use chain of custody because that's the one that I use in the back of my head most of the time. But that will firmly establish responsibility for what's in that model. But at the same time, then this also needs to be made to serve the interests of the consultants and the DOT, not just the contractor. This protection needs to go all ways. And to that end, building out a more robust QA/QC process for a model deliverable is a must, and something that we're working with a lot of different consultants to figure out.
Awesome. Do you see this mostly being used in design build?
I think it has applications in traditional design build, CMGC. It's got applications in all of them. This project, it's going to be design build, and we're using it here. So I guess to answer that question, no.
Yeah. You can't always pick your contractor when you go with the design build method, right? And so that's certainly one thing that we are aware of. But this particular project likely to attract a contractor, I think that will be innovative and willing to use the software and the BIM model. And as David mentioned, if we can make it approachable and accessible to them, I think it'll go a long way. And eventually we're hoping to really change the mindset of our contractors. I know it's not going to be the very first project that's going to happen on, but the more the DOT puts out BIM models and the more we can make them efficient for the contractors, naturally, the more they're going to pick up and utilize them. So I think, as Mike said, it can be really used amongst all contracting methods.
Yeah, I think we've seen pilot projects and projects that consultants and DOTs are engaged with across the entire range of contracting methods. Certainly design build projects offer the contractor a little bit more chance to get their fingerprints all over what exactly that model needs to be able to do. So we've used some of the design builds here and globally that we've been involved in as kind of a set of pointers, if you will, pointing us in the direction of, all right, what does the contractor actually want from this? Because they're kind of specifying that from day one. But ultimately, I mean, the same contractors who do design build projects also do design bid build. We want workflows that are going to be accessible to everyone and provide value to everyone. No sense in it would be easy for us to just take the attitude of BIM is coming, and then just say, all right, well, that absolves us of all responsibility to actually make sure that it works for the consultant, the contractor. But ultimately, this is going to be a much smoother transition, and it's going to serve everyone's interests if we make good authoring tools for the EOR, good review tools for the DOT, and good consumption tools for the contractors.
Perfect. What aspects of the work you've done can be used to future projects that essentially can lead to cost savings for consultant designers? When I say aspects, I mean pieces of the design, model, etc.
That's an interesting question.
Mike, actually, it's kind of the topic that we were discussing on this video chat before they let everyone else in. I'll jump in if you don't have any thoughts yet, but otherwise
No, go for it. I'll jump in. I'll follow up with you.
Yeah, one of the major initiatives that we're undertaking internally is to kind of plumb the depths of exactly how some of the parametricity and the intelligence within the modeling suite enables, I'll call it a much more wide-ranging, much more comprehensive conception of what we mean by the word template, basically. How much automation can we offer for an EOR or a DOT in-house designer to very quickly mock up 4 or 5 different alternatives, push them out to be analyzed in one of the commercial packages they use, and then pick one and refine it out to 10%. Getting over that hump is really what is going to make this work well. I mean, Mike, you said before, plans development is a strength. That is something that we now have seen we can do and do well. But we want to try to make it so that the upfront side of the process also offers those same benefits, that same automation. So that's what we're up to. Mike, I'm sure you have a better answer based on the actual experience the last 2 years, though.
I mean, I don't know if I have a better answer. I would just say that it's, we can liken it to 2D now. I mean, we already have, libraries and libraries of 2D CAD details that we utilize and, I guess modify for use on every project. And I don't think that is going to change when we get to 3D. You're gonna find a project or a bridge that you build in 3D that is similar to another project that you're doing, and you're going to want to utilize pieces and parts from that. And so if the mechanisms are in place and the libraries are in place and the templates are, kind of stored and able to be utilized, you're just going to be able to see and build upon the efficiencies that you've already begun to realize or have known, up to date.
And at the risk of talking too much, I'll add on that the change management and kind of the QA/QC benefits to doing this in a model make that kind of, if you will, start from my last project workflow a lot more attractive, because there's much less manual scrubbing of drawings, and there's much less risk of having old, outdated details slip through into QA/QC or even past QA/QC in some instances. So the model as an underpinning to this should make workflows like that more attractive from a risk management perspective as well.
Perfect. So does ALLPLAN support the Building Smart IFC standards as the Federal Highway Administration BIM for infrastructure recommends?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, we've been involved with both Building Smart and the AASHTO pooled fund that's tasked with exploring BIM for bridges and structures for many years now, pretty much as long as each of them has existed. Working on taking the IFC standards that were developed initially for the verticals sector for buildings and industrial facilities, and applying those now first to bridges and then eventually to roadway, tunnel, and ports. So we are about as close as I feel confident in saying we're as close as any of the vendors to having a completely working set of IFC standards for bridges. We are awaiting finalization of certain, I don't want to get overly technical on this, but certain data subsets that are going to specify how, for instance, an EOR delivers a model to a construction contractor, or a construction contractor delivers that portions of that model to a structural fabricator. So we're waiting on the details to come out for some of the final bits and pieces of this. But broadly speaking, yes, these are standards we support, and we intend to stay at the forefront of supporting them going forward. I don't know, Scott, Mike, if you guys tire kick the IFC functionality at all and have anything to add to that, feel free to chime in.
I think you covered it for me.
Yeah, I'll go with that response as well.
All right.
Well, I'm afraid we've run out of time today. For those questions we didn't have time to answer, we'll be getting back to you via email. But that concludes today's presentation. On behalf of Roads and Bridges, I'd like to thank ALLPLAN for sponsoring today's webinar, and of course, all of you for joining. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.